we're going to talk about lobbying. That's right, we're going to talk about lobbying. And if that doesn't excite you, well, you may not have watched enough episodes of The Sopranos or Breaking Bad. Now, lobbying can be a wonderful thing. It's how average citizens band together to change laws for the benefit of society. But in this episode of Money Talks, we're going to discuss why lobbying is not enough by itself to build influence among U.S. lawmakers. Why? Well, because when you lobby, you are often only talking to the aides, the staff members of Congress, and they do not make the laws. They do not set policy. In fact, their job is to protect their boss, their member of Congress, from any sort of negative influence. So if you're trying to curry favor with Congress, just slapping them on the back and saying, "Hey, buddy, let's make some good things happen," it's not going to go very far. You need to go further. You need to get into their heads. You need to convince them that your viewpoint is the right viewpoint. And there is a way to do it. It's called issue advocacy advertising. And it's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Money Talks. It's me, and my mission, as always, is to give you the inside information you need to better navigate these turbulent times. If you enjoy these videos, please share them with your friends and family. Now, issue advocacy ads, also known as issue ads, are not like political ads. Political ads try to get you to vote a certain way. Issue ads try to get you to agree with a certain viewpoint. Let me give you an example so that we're all on the same page here. Back in 2003, California was considering a ballot initiative, which would have required a 3/5 majority vote for the passage of any new taxes. Now, this proposal, if it had passed, would have made it much more difficult for the government to raise taxes, even if they needed to. Sound familiar? This proposal was bad news for public sector unions because they were heavily invested in the prevailing tax rates. So what did they do? Well, they ran issue ads telling Californians that without new taxes, schools would suffer, hospitals would be open, public safety would be threatened. They used scare tactics, basically, to convince voters that raising taxes was a good idea. Now, did these ads explicitly tell people to vote a certain way? No, they didn't. They simply presented a viewpoint. But the goal was clear. By getting into people's heads, by forcing everyone to consider whether schools and hospitals and police and fire departments were adequately funded, the union hoped to sway voters towards supporting higher taxes, therefore protecting their own interests. Did it work? Well, the measure failed by a 60-40 margin, but that was not the end of the story. As it turns out, one of the chief architects of this failed measure went on to become a governor, and after he took office, he raised taxes anyway. Now, how do you think that happened? Well, I'll tell you how I think it happened. The governor got into the heads of voters. He convinced them that raising taxes was necessary, even though they had already said no at the ballot box. How do I know this? Because while governor, he ran his own issue ad campaign on behalf of raising taxes. And this time the message was the exact same one that the union used when they advocated for higher taxes through the ballot initiative. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that lobbying is simply not enough to move the needle with lawmakers. You have to get into their heads. You have to control the conversation, and issue ads are a powerful way to do it. Now, this is not a new concept. It's not like the founding fathers met together and said, "Hey, you know what? We gotta start an issue ad campaign to get these people to agree with our viewpoints." No, they didn't. In fact, the first issue ads were run by none other than George Washington himself. Back in 1789, Washington wanted to create a national bank. The opposition argued that such a bank would be unconstitutional and tyrannical. So, Washington started running ads in newspapers telling Americans that a national bank was actually a good idea. These ads presented the facts. They explained the benefits of a national bank. They tried to convince Americans that Washington was right, and it worked. Congress approved the creation of a national bank. Now, this was a one-off type situation. We're not going to see a lot of presidents running issue ads to push their agendas, but this does show you the power that issue ads can have. They can change minds. They can shape opinions. They can help you get what you want. Now, today, issue ads are most often associated with interest groups, which are organizations that try to influence government policy. And there are a ton of these groups out there, hundreds of thousands of them. Some are big, some are small, some are well-funded, others not so much. But all of them rely on one thing to get what they want, and that's issue ads. Now, let me give you an example of an interest group that's doing this effectively right now. It's called the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. They are running issue ads aimed at convincing Americans that price gouging is real and it's hurting the economy. Their ads are everywhere. You see them on TV, online, in newspapers, magazines, you name it. Their goal is to get Congress to pass legislation which would stop the Federal Trade Commission from cracking down on companies for price gouging. Right now, the FTC has broad authority to punish companies for price gouging. The Committee to Unleash Prosperity wants that authority curbed, and they're using issue ads to get what they want. Now, these ads don't just say, hey, call your congressman and tell him to support legislation which would curb the FTS price gouging authority. That's political advocacy. These ads present an argument. They tell stories of individuals who have been hurt by price gouging regulations. They try to change your mind on the issue. And then they hope that you will contact your lawmaker and tell them that you agree. And guess what? It's working. In late June, the House Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to advance the legislation out of committee. And the legislation itself has 186 co-sponsors. So you can see that issue ads can be effective. They can help you achieve your goals. But it's important to remember that issue ads are not a substitute for lobbying. They are a complement. The best way to influence lawmakers is to do both. Lobby them directly and then get into their heads through issue advocacy advertising. That's it for this edition of Money Talks. I'm the host, and until next time, remember, influence is everything. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and family. Also, if you'd like to receive email updates whenever I release new content, feel free to sign up to my email list. I include a link in the description below. Thank you again for watching. I will see you next time.